I want to tell you about a Tuesday, September 14th, 2 years ago. I was in the garage. I spend a lot of time in the garage. I've converted it into something of a workshop. And I was moving a box off a shelf. And something happened in my chest. Not sharp, not like the movies, more like pressure. Like someone put their hand in the center of my chest and pushed. I sat down on the step stool. I waited. It didn't go away. I went inside and I sat down at the kitchen table. I picked up the phone and I called Susan. She called 911. She called Daniel. She got in her car. By the time the ambulance came, I knew it was not a good day. What happened in the hospital I will spare you most of. It took 8 days, surgery, recovery, the whole process. I'm here, obviously. I came out of it well, as these things go. But what happened after, the weeks after I came home, when Susan and Daniel were trying to help me sort out what I needed and what was where and how everything was organized, what happened then was a different kind of embarrassment. I want to pause here and say something about the hospital itself, because I think people who haven't been through something like this don't understand what it does to your sense of yourself. You are 80 years old. You have run a business for 4 decades. You have made payroll in bad months. You have handled vendors and contractors and inspectors and every manner of professional difficulty. You think of yourself as someone who can handle things. And then you're lying in a hospital bed in a gown that doesn't close properly in the back, and someone is doing something uncomfortable to your arm, and you can hear Susan on the phone in the hallway trying to figure out which insurance card is the right one. And you realize you don't actually know which card is the right one either. That moment, that specific moment of not knowing, that stayed with me. Because I should have known. I should have had it written down somewhere obvious, and I didn't. My name is Bob Hayes, 82 years old. I ran Hayes Hardware in Cleveland for 42 years. I thought I had things together. What I found out, lying in a hospital bed, was that together meant something very different than I thought. Let me tell you what Susan found when she started going through the paperwork. She found my will. Good. That was in the right place. I knew where that was. What she couldn't find was anything else. She couldn't find a list of my financial accounts. She couldn't find my insurance policy documents. She didn't have the login for the online brokerage account I'd been using since 2009. She didn't know who my financial advisor was. I had switched advisors in 2018, and I had told no one. She found a folder marked important that contained a tax return from 2014, a receipt for a refrigerator I bought in 2001, and a birthday card from Margaret. Now, I say this with love for myself. I was an organized man. I ran a hardware store for 4 decades that had thousands of SKUs, a payroll, vendor relationships, building maintenance, customer accounts. I knew where everything was at the store. My personal finances were a different story. I knew where things were in my own head, in my memory. I had never actually organized them in a way that another human being could navigate without me. And lying in that hospital bed, while Susan was on the phone trying to figure out which insurance policy covered what and whether I had a healthcare proxy and where the document was. I thought, if this had gone differently, if I hadn't come back, she would have been doing this without me, while she was grieving, while she was also trying to handle everything else. I want you to sit with that image for a moment, because I think it's easy to hear it and nod and then move on. But really sit with it. Your daughter, or your son, or your spouse, or whoever it would be. They've just been through the hardest thing they've been through in years. They're operating on disrupted sleep and fear and grief. They have their own jobs, their own families, their own pressures that don't stop just because something happened to you. And now, in addition to all of that, they have to find your brokerage account login. They have to figure out which bank holds the account you opened in 2003 and never closed. They have to call the insurance company and give them account numbers they don't have access to. All of that is completely avoidable. It is avoidable if you do the work while you're still the one who can do it. That thought stayed with me through the whole recovery. Here's what I learned. Not what I knew intellectually before, what I actually learned, the way you only learn some things by almost not being around to learn them. The first thing, someone other than you needs to be able to find everything. Not eventually, right now, today. Every account, every policy, every subscription that charges your card, every login, every advisor and their contact information. Not in your head, somewhere physical or accessible that the person who loves you the most can find without having to search through a box in the garage. I know it takes time to build that document. I know it feels like a project for another day. It is not a project for another day. One of the first things I did when I got home from the hospital was sit down at that kitchen table and start writing a document I called What Susan Needs to Know. It took me 4 afternoons. Not because my finances are complicated, but because I had never organized them into a single coherent document before, and doing it properly meant being thorough. What's in that document? Every financial account, the institution name, the account type, the approximate balance, the account number, how to access it. Every insurance policy, company name, policy number, coverage type, where the physical documents are. My attorney's name and contact information, my financial advisor, my accountant. The location of the will, the location of the healthcare proxy, the location of the power of attorney. A list of every subscription service that charges my accounts automatically and how to cancel them. The login for my email, the login for the financial accounts, a note explaining that a password manager holds the rest and how to get into that, Social Security information, the pension from the hardware store years. It's about 8 pages. Susan has a copy, Daniel has a copy, my attorney has a copy. Do that. The second thing, your financial house is probably more complicated than you think and less organized than it should be. When Daniel sat with me the first week I was home and we went through everything together, properly, systematically, we found things I had forgotten about. a small IRA from the 90s that had just been sitting there. Not untouched, it was growing, but not optimized, not reviewed in years. A life insurance policy I'd had since 1985 that had a cash value I'd never tapped or even looked at. 2 accounts at 2 different banks that could be consolidated. Nothing dramatic, but things that, if I had sat with a professional and gone through them, could have been simplified or improved years ago. I had never done that review, not a real one, not a sit with someone and account for everything review. I thought I was on top of it. I had the general picture. The general picture was fine. The details were a mess. Here's what I'd tell anyone listening. Every 5 years, sit down with someone, a financial planner, an accountant, a trusted family member, and go through everything. Not to make changes necessarily, just to know where you are. The inventory itself has value. Just knowing the full picture in one place at one time, that's worth doing. The third thing, healthcare planning is financial planning. I think most of us separate these things in our minds, but they're not separate. What happens to your money depends enormously on what decisions get made about your health, and whether those decisions get made by the right people, with the right documentation, in the right way. I had a healthcare proxy. I had a power of attorney. What I had not done was review them recently, or make sure the people named in them were still the right people and were still willing to serve in those roles. Susan was named as my healthcare proxy years ago, and she still was, still is, still willing. That was fine. But if I hadn't come home, if the surgical outcome had been different, the financial and healthcare decisions would have gone together. The cost of extended care, the account from which it would be paid, the decisions about what procedures to pursue or decline. All of that is interconnected, and most people have not thought through how those dominoes fall. I want to say something here about long-term care specifically, because this is the financial conversation most people my age have not had with their families. We've all thought about dying. Most of us have some version of a plan for that. Fewer of us have thought carefully about the years that might come before dying. The years of needing help, maybe needing a lot of help, maybe needing to move somewhere that provides care. That is expensive. It is among the most expensive things that can happen to a family financially. And most people I know have not sat down and actually worked through what that would look like, where the money would come from, who would make decisions, what kind of care they'd want. After my heart attack, Susan and Daniel and I had that conversation. It was not comfortable. Nobody wanted to be there. But we were all better off for having had it. They knew where I stood. I knew what was realistic. We had a plan that wasn't dependent on someone's best guess in a moment of crisis. The fourth thing. Tell your family what you want before a crisis tells them something incomplete. When I was in that hospital bed, Daniel flew in from Chicago. He got there on day 2. He sat down next to the bed and he said, "Dad, are we going to be okay? Do you know where everything is?" And in that moment, I could not tell him yes. Not completely. I could tell him the big picture, But the specific answer to where is everything and how do I access it and what do I do first if something happens to you, I couldn't give him that in a hospital room. His face. He didn't say anything, he just nodded. But I saw something in his face that I don't want to see again. He was scared. Not about me. He knew the surgery had gone well. He was scared that he wasn't prepared, that he didn't know what to do. A son should not have to feel that way in a hospital waiting room because his father didn't organize a document. That's on me. And I'm not saying it to beat myself up. I'm saying it so you understand the cost. The cost isn't just financial. It's emotional. It's relational. It's putting the people who love you in a position of fear and uncertainty at the moment when they're already afraid. I've thought about that look on Daniel's face many times since. He's a capable man. He is 54 years old. He runs a department. He manages complicated things at his job every day. But standing next to a hospital bed where his 80-year-old father was lying after surgery, he was a boy who didn't know if he could handle what was coming. And I put him there. Not intentionally, but I put him there. Because I had told myself for years that I'd get to the organization, that it was on the list, that it wasn't urgent. It was urgent. It was always urgent. I just hadn't known it yet. The fifth thing. Your health is your most important financial asset, and you can't insure your way out of not taking care of it. I had good insurance, really good coverage. It handled the hospital bills well. But insurance doesn't give you back the 8 days you lose in a hospital, or the 3 months of limited activity during recovery, or the changes to what you can do and for how long. I'm doing well now. I walk every day. I watch what I eat better than I used to. But I will tell you honestly, I should have been doing all of that 15 years ago. I said I'll get to that about exercise and diet for a long time. I was busy. The store needed things. Your body doesn't negotiate. It gives you some years of getting away with things, and then it stops giving. Take care of it while it's still giving. And I don't mean this abstractly. I mean, what are you doing tomorrow morning? Is there a walk you could take? A doctor's appointment you've been putting off? Something you've been eating for 30 years because it's habit and not because it's serving you. These things add up in one direction or the other. I know this now in a way I didn't know it before September 14th. There is a particular clarity that comes from almost not being here to know things. I'd rather you didn't need that experience to get there. Here's where I am now. The document Susan needed, it exists. Everything is organized. Both children have copies. The accounts are simplified. I did a proper financial review 6 months after coming home. Cleaned up what needed cleaning. Made changes I'd been putting off. I updated my will, updated the healthcare proxy, had a real conversation with Susan and Daniel about what I want in different scenarios. Those conversations were uncomfortable, all of them. But after each one, something lifted, because the weight of the unspoken, unorganized, unaddressed, it carries a cost too. And when those things are handled, when everything is where it should be, and everyone knows what they need to know. There's a lightness that I hadn't felt in years. I almost didn't get the chance to do any of that. A lot of people don't. They have a September Tuesday that doesn't go as well as mine did, and the unfinished things stay unfinished. And the people left behind have to deal with the unfinished things while they're dealing with everything else. What I want to say to you is this. You might be in better health than I was on that September Tuesday. You probably are. But the work I had to do after the heart attack, you can do it right now, before anything happens. The document, the conversations, the financial review, the healthcare planning, all of it. You have time to do it calmly, clearly, without anyone standing over you scared. You have time to do it without a hospital gown and an uncomfortable bed and the beeping of machines in the background. You can sit at your kitchen table on a Sunday morning with your coffee and start writing down where things are. That's it. That's the first step. Just start writing down where things are. Use that time. Don't wait for a September Tuesday to tell you that you should have started in March. If this reached you somewhere, if something here made you think of something you need to do, leave me a comment. Tell me where you are. And if there's someone in your life who needs to hear this before a crisis forces them to hear it, send it to them. It might be the most useful thing you do for them this year.